Hi, and welcome to another episode of Fully Baked. Today we're doing Madeleines. It's a small cookie-sized French butter cake, which is why some people think they're cookies, but they're not. They're little cakes. They're pretty fancy. They're just amazing. You can have them super fancy. You can have them pretty simple. They seem really difficult. They're not, but you must follow certain things that are the trick to getting them to come out the way they're supposed to. So, I actually got introduced to Madeleines in the movie The Transporter. And I thought, ooh, those look good. And then couldn't make them work. But then I found out the little tricks to how to make them come out the way they're supposed to. So that's what we're gonna do today. So you will need a little bit of special equipment for this particular one. You will need Madeleine pans. Now the ones I have look like this, and they're the classic shell shape. They do sell them with this shape without the shell lines in them. So you basically just get this shape with the little hump that they're supposed to have. These are a bit more traditional. I do suggest if you decide to do these and you get pans to get two, because otherwise, this first step, in order to do the second half, you will have to wash these, let them fully cool, and then start over again with everything you did for the first batch. So it is a lot easier to just do two. The other thing we're gonna do today is we're going to cook these on top of a cookie sheet. Now, it does two things for us. It allows us to handle the little pans a lot easier, and it allows us to rotate them in the oven a little bit easier. And also, I took my pans I don't usually use for baking to use because these both fit in my oven at once and we can do both batches at once. But if you'll notice, these are not silver. If you do have dark bakeware, your cooking time can vary due to the dark bakeware, so be aware of that. What else we're gonna need today is a little sauce pot, a little soup pot, just to melt our butter. We're going to need, of course, our trusty rack. Now, one of the steps is that we're going to make the batter, cover it tightly, and put it in the refrigerator for a minimum of an hour up to overnight. If you have bowls with a lid, you can seal the lid on it instead. We will need 2 bowls. We will need a zester. This is the type I have, a microplaner. They have the ones that have little claws that you can scratch against. If you want to do this, you can get these at the dollar store. If you're thinking, well, I'm already buying pans, I don't want to buy other stuff, you can always take a small fork and gently zest your lemon. However, just be really careful you don't get down to the white. That's what's bitter. And we will need a juicer. This is the juicer I like to use. However, there are other options. There are the reamers, which is basically this part with a point that you just twist. And again, you can get some kind of juicer at the dollar store. Or if you don't want to, you just cut your lemon in half, put the open side, the cut side down in your hand and squeeze so that what's left in your hand is everything you want to strain out. But make sure your hands are super clean. We're going to need 2 different whisks, okay? And a little bowl for our zester and a little measure cup for our lemon juice. Alrighty, I've got 2 eggs warming. We're also going to need 4 ounces of butter, 2/3 a cup sugar, a cup of flour, some vanilla, pinch of salt, tablespoon of lemon juice, and a tablespoon of lemon zest. All right. Let's pull out our ingredients and get started. Got our 3rd cup. We've got our cup. The other thing I want to get out, though, is our cooking spray for when we prepare our pans, and then also for when we drop our batter. I'm looking for a specific spoon that I have and can't find. So we will just use a regular tablespoon. I had a metal one that I was thinking would be easier to show you guys what we were doing with it, but we will make do with what we have. All right. So the first thing I want to do is start my tiny little pan here that is back on here heating, because I want to get the butter melting, because we are going to need to let that cool as well. And I like to let it cool naturally rather than put it in the fridge. So I'm going to cut my 4 ounces of butter. Now that's the entire stick of a regular butter, as you can see. Or if you have a big block of butter, get out your kitchen scale and weigh it. I'm going to chunk it so it has an easier time melting for me. You don't have to, you can just toss the stick in. You could melt it in the microwave. I always tend to over melt in the microwave and I lose some of the butter that way. So I'm going to go ahead and just do it the way I usually do, which is chunk it up, get it in the pan, and let it melt. All right, so let's take a look at our directions, make sure we get this ready. We're melting our butter so we can set it aside to cool. Our next step is we're gonna just take our flour and sugar into our first bowl and whisk it together. And we whisk it together so that it's fully combined. So we need 2/3 cup sugar, so let's do this first. And I've got my 1/3 cup scoop, so we need 2 of those. Now I'm going to get us out a lovely little whisk, or not whisk, strainer, for when we do our flour. So that's 1/3. Make sure we don't pack. Level. 2/3 cup sugar. Let's get this out of our way. All right, let's put this up. Now let's get our cup of flour. We'll scoop that in without packing it. And level through our sifter. And then we're going to set our flour aside because we will need this to prepare our pans. Check the butter. If you give it a little circle when it gets to about this point, where, I don't know if you can see, there we go, where it's got the butter patch still in it, but it's not fully melted. If you give it a little circle around, the already melted butter will help the larger pieces melt without burning your butter. Now, if you wanted to change your flavor up a little, you could brown the butter and go for a brown butter flavor, but you have to be really careful you don't overdo your butter and end up with a burnt butter. So we're going to go ahead and pull our butter since it has melted, and we're going to just set it aside and let it cool down. Now we're going to take our whisk and we're going to whisk our flour and sugar together and make sure that it is fully mixed. And then we are going to set it aside. I'm going to set this aside and grab a spatula. All right, our next step, if we look at our directions, is we're going to whisk together our eggs, vanilla, and salt, lemon juice, and lemon zest. So the first thing I want to do is zest my lemons. These are rinsed off. Now, especially if you're going to zest because you're using the skin, you definitely want to make sure you rinse your lemons. But even on any fruit, whether it be lemon, lime, watermelon, cantaloupe, even bananas, any fruit you're gonna slice a knife through, you absolutely want to make sure that you have rinsed it, because anything on the outside will get dragged through your fruit when the knife goes through. So we're just gonna take our microplaner and we're gonna run it across like this until we get the zest. Being careful not to zest the white stuff underneath called the pith, because that's where the bitterness is. The yellow part on the outside is where the lovely oils and flavor are. Now you can hold it directly on it, you can hold it a little above it, whatever is comfortable for your hands. Now, it says a tablespoon. I like a lot of lemon zest. I usually just zest either a very large lemon, or in this case, a couple of small lemons. You're gonna need to take on a microplaner your finger on the other side and run it down to get all your zest off. As general, I am making a mess with my zest. You make less of a mess if you hold it on. I just find that awkward. Also, you can, if you have a box grater, zest your lemon against the box grater on the smallest grating side, because you're basically grating the zest off of the lemon. I'm going to go ahead and I've got my other lemon. And I'm going to work on that too, because I like a lot of lemon zest. You really do need a whole tablespoon, but if you like things a little less lemon, you can use a little less. If you like a lot of lemon, you could use a little more. If you want to go lemon lime, you can use half lemon, half lime, both for the juice and for the zest. Because while the classic flavor of these are basically lemon vanilla, there are a lot of varieties to Madeleines. You can change up any of the citrus, lemon, lime, orange. I like to do an orange cardamom one sometimes. You can do just your lemon vanilla. You can do lemon thyme. You can do lemon basil. All right. Out there on our zest. All right. So we can go ahead and put our zest directly in the bowl. And you'll see that the zest will try and stick to your bowl. That's why I'm using this spatula. Well, this out of the way. And I am going to go fetch a knife to cut the lemons, because I did not bring it with me. All right. Grab some extra kitchen Sprite while I was at it. Now, there is a little trick to getting as much lemon juice as you can out of your lemon. Give it a quick roll with your hand on the counter. You don't have to smush it, just give it a little pressure and then cut it in half. Now you'll see we get the seeds in there. When you do the reamer, the edges catch all the seeds and the extra pulp. If you do it cut down in your hand, you catch all of that. So I actually think I am going to trade this for a little bowl so we don't make a mess. No, I still want that though. Let's get us a little bowl to squeeze over. So depending on how juicy your lemon is will depend on how much you need to get your tablespoon. Now you need the zest of your fruit, but if your lemon doesn't, if you only use one lemon and it doesn't, I've got a seed, and it doesn't provide you the full tablespoon you need, you can use bottled lemon juice, but try and be sure that it is natural lemon juice and not artificial lemon juice. It has a much different flavor. Nor would I suggest changing the vanilla extract to a lemon extract. Again, that has a very, to me, chemical flavor. And if you go just even a drop too much, it is very overpowering. All right, that should be more than enough lemon juice. So let's get that and the seed out of the way. Poor seed tried to get away from me. I'm going to wash my hands since I touched the wall. All right, so we're going to take our lemon juice, and I have one of these little tiny measure cups that I think I got at HEB, and I know they have them at a lot of the dollar stores and Ross as well, and it measures liquid tablespoons for me. So I'm just going to pour my lemon juice, and I've got a little more than a tablespoon, so I'm going to go ahead and actually use that little bit more than a tablespoon. But if, like I said, if you don't like a little extra lemon, you can measure that exactly to the tablespoon or slightly less if you're not enjoying that flavor. So let's put this lemon away. All right. Now, also in our bowl, now that we have that, we want to add our vanilla. And it calls for a teaspoon of vanilla, but as you well know already, if you watch me, I always use more vanilla than it calls for because I like it a strong vanilla flavor. Spend the money if you can to get the pure vanilla, then you can use a little more if you like it. If not, if you're still using the imitation, which tastes just fine, don't overuse though, because if you go over a small amount, then you really can taste the difference in that strong over flavor. And this is just a pinch of salt, which technically is an eighth of a teaspoon, half of a quarter. And since I don't have one, I'm actually just going to do a pinch. You could also weigh it out, but it's not really necessary. A pinch is just that, a little pinch of salt. I'm once again using my pink Himalayan salt. You can use your regular table salt. And then the only other thing we need are our eggs, which I had room temperaturing. And so we will pour those out. And then we will do as we always do, crack them into one bowl. Get a bowl, crack them into the bowl to make sure nothing's wrong with them and that we don't have any shells. One, second egg. And as always, a little spilled wipe up. Remove these guys. And then we are going to vigorously, yet carefully, whisk these guys so they are frothy. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. All right. So you're on a decent sized whisk and you want a bowl big enough to whisk so it's frothy without wearing your eggs and salt. Just kind of, I'm going to pick up and come so you can see the hand motion. Let's go this way. And it's just a little there. And you should start to see them look like that. They have that nice yellow color, even though it's just the eggs, really. And like I said, vigorously, so it's gonna be a little mini workout. And then you get frothy. You see your little bubbles. forming on the top, that's frothy. Give it one last good whisk. Put this away. Now, we're on to our next step. So far, not too hard, just following each step exactly. All right, then we're going to take our dry ingredients and combine them with our wet, and we're only going to stir until it's fully combined. But when we say add the dry to the wet, we do not mean the butter. That is on a separate track, which again is why I say always read your recipe, either right before you start, the night before. Make sure you know the steps so you know that, yes, I've started the butter at the beginning, set it aside, and I do know it's not considered part of this step. So we're going to go ahead and take our spatula, get our flour out. I'm going to scrape the sides, make sure I get all my flour and sugar. All right. And then we're going to just fold in from the bottom and keep going until we have an incorporation. And it's going to be thick. Again, this is why some people argue this is a cookie and not a cake, because it seems like cookie batter at this point, but it is a little butter cake. And then you want to get in the bottom and make sure you get all that flour and sugar that always likes to go to the bottom of your bowl, whether you're doing it by hand with a stand mixer or a hand mixer. There always is flour that wants to get to the bottom. So there it is, all the flour incorporated, and it's a thick, wet dough. And that's what you want right now. Okay? And then we are going to take our melted butter that's been cooling, and we are going to pour this into all of our ingredients, and we are going to stir until it is incorporated. I usually take my spatula and get any of that butter that's sort of hanging around there. We'll set that down. Now we're going to stir this together again until it's incorporated into one, because right now you can just see the butter is sort of sitting on the top of it. Very liquid. So we are going to stir until that becomes incorporated into the batter we already had in the bowl. You don't want to stir too hard because you don't want to over stir, but you don't want to be so gentle that it takes you a very long time to do it, because it's not necessary. All right, that is what you get. It's a thick batter, but it still pours. And you see how the butter is all mixed in. It's not liquid like that anymore. So let's go ahead and scrape off our spatula with our very clean hands. Now, we're going to take our lid or our plastic wrap, tightly cover our bowl. This needs to go into the refrigerator for at least an hour, up to overnight. So let's go ahead and get that in the fridge, because there's actually still one more step before we get going here. We need to pre-prepare the pans, and this is a super important step to making sure that your Madeleines come out the way they're supposed to. So there are some options. You can take your butter and butter everything, and you got to get in every crack, every crevice, butter, 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 butter. I hate doing that. So I am going to use cooking spray. So instead of butter and flouring my pans, I'm going to spray and flour the pans. Then there is a third option, one I have often used. I just don't have any of it today. It's a baking spray bottle like this. You can find it on the baking aisle. And I want to say it's Baker's Delight. And you spray it. It is the cooking spray that has flour already in it, so you don't even have to flour the pan after you spray it, which is amazing, but I didn't get it. So let me go over the sink and spray these so that I don't get spray all over the floor and slip and fall. So you want to make sure you generously spray your whole pan, making sure that you did not miss any crevices, any cracks, because then your stuff will stick. And then you're going to take flour and you're going to drop it into every well, shake it around, and then turn your pan over the sink and empty any excess flour. So you're basically just going to take your flour and you're going to wiggle it in over everything. And then you're going to make sure it coats every section here of it. I'm using a little more flour than I normally would because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, but you want every section of that covered. Now, I am going to take this and dump it out over the sink. Pan, once shook out, should look like that. This is going straight into the freezer, even before I prepare the second pan. You'll find when we do sugar cookies that cooling the pans is also very important. They don't need the freezer, but they do need to get cooled as well as the batter. This is a great little fancy snack that's amazing at baby showers and bridal showers. Depending on the holidays, how your family does it. Some people do an open house on the evening of Christmas or on Christmas Day. And it's just such a nice, fancy little dessert that actually, once you know how to do it, isn't that difficult. So once you get your second pan fully floured and buttered, or floured and sprayed, or just sprayed if you get the other ones, put it in the freezer. And yes, that is freezer, not refrigerator. All right. And you set your timer for a minimum of 1 hour. You can do a couple hours. But I wouldn't spray and start the pans until you're ready to work. But if you run over your hour because you're in the middle of doing something else, you'll be fine. All right, I will come back to you guys in an hour when we're ready to start filling the pans and getting them in the oven. Okay, we're back. It's been an hour. First thing we're going to do before we take anything out of the refrigerator or freezer is we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 350. All right, always having our rack, unless otherwise stated, on the middle row of the oven. All right, so let's get out one of our pans. We'll take these off and we will get out our batter. Okay, and you'll see that our batter has set. And I will show you what we're dealing with here in a second. Now, since I couldn't find my loose metal one, that makes it so much easier, I'm gonna take off my tablespoon so that I can use this to scoop, because we're gonna do 1 tablespoon of batter per well. So the first thing I'm gonna do is give our scoop a little spritz so it doesn't stick, and it never comes out right when you put it in there. I just take my paper towel, make sure the whole spoon is covered and there's no excess liquid in the bottom. Now you'll see again, like I said, it was set, and it's more like a cookie batter at that point. You take a tablespoon, for each well, and you just slide it off right into the center of the well. You don't have to do anything else, you just leave it just like that. And you just repeat your process all the way through, being sure to get a full tablespoon for each one. And of course, again, we say when we're pre-cooking, we can touch if it's not for us, but it's also why you want to keep your hands nice and clean. So here we go. It goes fairly quickly. Resist the urge to spread it around, because you just need it to set in there. And that one didn't get all of its dough out, so we're going to add a little to it. If it gets too sticky, you can clean off your spoon, respray it, and start again. Now, we don't want these sitting on the stovetop as the oven heats, because we don't want to heat these up prior to them going in the oven. Now, as I was saying earlier, that having 2 pans is easier for the batter. If you only have 1 pan, then what happens is you end up having to rewash, redo the entire situation, letting this cool thoroughly first before you can start your next round. Now I'm going to pop this sheet pan into the fridge until our oven's ready to go, so it doesn't heat up even though my kitchen isn't hot yet. Then we're going to go ahead and get our second oven started. We'll grab our other pan. Do exactly the same thing we did the first time. You're starting to get low on batter, so you're probably going to have to use your spatula to get some out. Now, depending on your humidity level, type of flour, how absorbent everything is, how much lemon juice, all that stuff will determine how many of these you actually get out of there. It really does often depend on the humidity for how much your flour absorbs. We're getting towards the end here. Good scrape going. Take my spatula, scrape it. I'm still going to put it into my tablespoon so I don't overfill any of these. And normally I get 1.5 dozen unless I make a double batch, but then I have the extra left over. So if you got a 1 bigger pan that had 18 wells, then you would you'd have a full pan of the single batch. So, all right. I'm going to pop this one in the fridge as well. As our oven finishes heating, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse off my hand and get the water into this bowl so it doesn't stick to it. All right. Now, there are lots of different things you can do with Madeleines. As I had spoken about earlier, you can change up your flavor simply by changing your citrus note. You could probably even use a yuzu as well. Lime, orange. Grapefruit's tough. It's a real subtle. You would think it's stronger, but it doesn't always give you a really good grapefruit flavor. You can do blood orange. Like I said, I like to do orange cardamom. I've done lemon thyme or lemon basil. You want to infuse your basil and lemon leaves into your butter. So you're going to go ahead and melt your butter with the lemon basil in there, or lemon or basil in there. And then leave it sit and cool with it sitting in there, strain it out. Or if you leave the whole leaves, which I would do at that point, pull the whole leaves out. When I do that, I also chop super fine to put into the batter itself to get that flavor. You could do a little bit of chocolate, cocoa powder in there. You have to be really careful with the baking because you won't be able to see the browning. You could use strawberry or raspberry powder so it doesn't add the liquid, but you can get that strong flavor. You could go with almond paste in it and almond extract, or you could do the chocolate with almond. If you do the chocolate, you can dip the end in chocolate and roll it in chopped almonds also. Like I said before, I really like the orange cardamom dipped in chocolate, chopped pistachio, and then roll the end in chopped pistachios. Another really good flavor is if you do the lime and you take it and you dip it in white chocolate and then roll it in some lightly toasted coconut. There's many options for your chocolate dipping as well. Your chocolate dipping, you can take the entire Madeleine and dip it, the whole bottom in the chocolate, flip it over and let it dry, and then you just have it coated in the bottom. It's a little less fancy, tastes amazing. You can then you can just easily melt your chocolate in the microwave for the bottom for the dip and roll because you don't really see the chocolate. If you want it to look super fancy, you can temper your chocolate, which means bringing it to a certain temperature so it's a little shiny. Dip your end, let it set, melt some white chocolate. You can drizzle or you could pipe on it. Looks really beautiful. You can do some super finely chopped candied lemon peel or candied orange peel, candied lime peel when you do the dipped chocolate to roll it in. So there's many different ways you can change your flavor to these. I know there's even a lovely recipe for a sweet tea flavor. I haven't tried that one yet. And like I said, these are just a great little dessert. So you're not having this huge thing. You're just having this really small but rich and flavorful butter cake. And like I said, a lot of people want to call them cookies. They are cakes. All right, we are at temperature. Let's get our pans in the oven. All right. Now, I happen to know which side of my oven tends to be hotter, so I'm going to put the full tray on that side. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the half tray with the batter side towards the hotter end of the oven first. We're going to go ahead, put them in. We're going to set our timer for 8 minutes. And then we're going to rotate them and check them. They take somewhere between 8 to 12, 13, 14 minutes, depending on your oven, the size of them, how much you fill them, how your batter is. And if you're wondering, besides just a cute little dessert for yourself, what to do with these, I have given them as Christmas gifts. I've put them out for guests on Christmas Eve, for snack, or post Christmas meal with coffee. They're amazing with tea. Baby showers they're great for. Wedding showers they're great for. Birthday parties, as a little snack cake for the adults that are attending the children's birthday party. The best part about them is they can be plain, they can be super fancy. You can tailor to your audience. You could even just powder sugar the top too. Personally, I think that would make it too sweet for me, but everybody has different tastes, so it may not be too sweet for you. All right, we were going to check these in about 6 minutes, so I will be back with you when we're ready to check them. Okay, we're about 45 seconds out from giving them a look. I'll show you what they look like at this point. And we're going to rotate our pans, which means we're going to pull it out, turn it around, put it back in. So the ones that were in the back are now in the front. The ones that were in the front are now in the back. Again, because ovens have different spots with different heats, everything cooks a little better. You'll see how that 1 tablespoon that didn't look like it was filling the well has spread and filled the well perfectly. If you had any drippage, I try to clean it there so you don't have any extra on your Madeleine when it finishes cooking. So we're about ready to check them, turn them, see what we got going on here. All right, as you can see, we have filled the wells, and we don't want to bounce them around too much because we don't want them to deflate in the middle. So I'm going to turn that around, put it right back in the oven. Then we're going to pull the other one out, do the exact same thing. Again, you can see, same as the others, fully filled up our well. All right. We're going to close our oven, set our timer for 5 minutes. But we're going to keep an eye on them, so you want to try and keep your oven light on, because when they start to brown and set, we don't want to overcook them. So we're going to keep a little eye on it. What you're going to see when they come out and we flip them out of our pan is you'll see the nice shell and it'll have a hump. On the ones that don't have the shell and they're just the shape, the hump is almost more pronounced, but that hump is supposed to be there. If they're done correctly, they have a lovely hump in the middle. Now when we check them and they're starting to brown, we're going to want to push on them just gently, very gently with your clean finger, because you're supposed to get spring back, and that's telling you that it's done. But if you push too hard and it's not ready, you could poke a hole in it. So we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is, like I said, keep an eye on it, test it as needed. And right now I'm going to rewash my hands for when we test ours, because I had to let the dog out and I had touched the door. And we don't want to touch the nearly cooked food with our hands directly after touching something that's not sanitary. All right, so we are about 2+ more minutes in. I'm taking a good look. They're looking good. Well, I think we're gonna go the way my oven works, a full 5 minutes. So, as always, if you have any questions or comments about today's recipe, techniques, or products, drop a question in the comment or hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at @SamKissed. If you happen to make these, drop a picture of your final product in there. We're getting a little ahead today because we're just waiting on these. You can always find me on Twitter and Instagram at SamKissed, SAMKIST. If you have any questions or comments, you can either write a comment there or send a message, and I will get back to you with those. What we're going to do Next episode is going to be another sort of healthier option for snacks. With no bake protein snacks. They're quick, they're easy, they're tasty, they're desserty flavored, candy flavored. They are a great afternoon snack between the last class and sports for kids. And they're a good healthy burst of protein prior to doing something athletic. They're great to have to take to work for that afternoon wall, if you're gonna be in the car. They're also super quick to make because while you put them together, you're not really baking. So you're getting these lovely dessert snack bites that are way healthier than real candy or real snacks, but you don't have to turn the oven on. So that makes it so much better, quite frankly. When you've got kids going back to school, you're going back to work, you've got homework, you've got sports, you've got activities, everything else that goes along with it. With the holidays coming up, it's good to have a quick, easy snack in your back pocket. All right, we're getting to within a minute. So I'm gonna actually open and take a quick look because I wanna make sure we're not getting too dark. And we're not quite browning yet. And the browning will happen fairly quickly. When we get to 13 minutes, by looking at these with this 5 minutes, we will probably need another minute or two on these. So that's what we're gonna do. But first we're gonna go ahead and take a look at them. I'll show you what it looks like to test them and that they're not quite brown enough, and we'll go from there. Now these are a little different than some of the other things we've made where they rested in the pan for 5 minutes or they rested on the cookie sheet for 5 minutes before you move them. These need to come out of the pan when they're done because you don't want them to continue cooking. You need to stop the process. And if you have buttered and floured or prepared your pans properly with the spray, you should be able to invert them and have them come right out. And so that you can put them on the rack and completely cool. And then you want to store them in an airtight container from there. Alrighty, let's take a look at these and see what we've got. We're not quite browning yet. As you can see, they're just getting close to it. So you're gonna wanna give them a light touch. You're getting no spring back, it just presses down a little. It's not soft where it's, I guess the best way to put it is it's not smushy, like it doesn't, your finger's not in danger of sinking down, but instead of springing back to me, I just sort of had a little finger indent. And I was pretty sure that's what we were gonna get instead of our lovely spring back, because we're not browned yet. And they kind of go hand in hand. But what you could feel while doing it is that they're starting to be solider rather than soft in the middle. And I don't mean hard, but what I mean is not like liquidy soft. So you know you're almost finished. So these are gonna take about maybe another minute or so. And then we will check them again. It's one of the few items towards the end of your bake that you are gonna open and close your oven because you do need to check on these carefully. They're one of those things, they're not ready, they're overdone. So we're a minute in, I'm gonna check again. And it looks like we're just starting to get some browning, so I'm gonna go ahead and close. Our smaller batch should be ready by the time this second minute is over, so we're gonna go ahead and pull those first. And we're gonna dump right onto the counter initially because it is cleaned, and it is cleaned with the vinegar, so it's food safe to dump the food directly on it. That way I can put them up on the cooling rack as we go. All right, we've got about 15 seconds and it's looking good. Alrighty, let's see. All right, let's check our smaller batch first. All right, Now, you can see they have browns around the edges. Trying to get it there, you can see that way better. You got a little brown around the edges. And now, what we're gonna do is give them a little push. You should get just a little spring back. So, we're gonna go ahead and put that down. Get our little pan. Get my other one of these guys because those got hot. And while I'm finishing up with this pan, I'm going to go ahead and turn the oven off. And I'm just going to turn these guys over. And give them a little shake. If they don't come right out, just give them a little pop on the back. Pull these other ones out so they don't overdo. And this is what that is really hot. That is what you have. You can see the brown. Oh, good thing I had a little table right there. You can see the little brown. And you can see when you push it, it just pops right back up. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these up here real quick. And let's dump these other ones out. Again, if they don't drop easily, just give them a little tap. All right. And tap the pan. And we had one that stuck. Two that stuck. Okay. If you don't quite get all your crevices, there's your stickage. I had two out of the batch that stuck, which is why I try to get the baker's spray, because I feel like I get better coverage, or with the butter. But and again, you can see you've got the browning, you got a good spring back, and if you look at them, particularly from the side, you get a little hump. Like I said, when you see the ones that are without the shell, the camel hump's a little easier to see. So let me get these up here and chilling. All right. Our little broken ones up there. Alrighty. So that is Madeleine's. And like I said, one of the things you can choose to do is dip this whole bottom into chocolate, flip it over to cool until the chocolate sets. Or you can dip the point. I usually go to the top of the smallest edge of the shell and dip it. And then roll it in anything you want or just the chocolate. All right. Remember, next month, no bake protein snacks. As always, you can find me at @SamKist, SAMKIST, on both Instagram and Twitter. Thank you, Mark and Haley and FTF Media, for giving me a place to put the videos up. And I'll see y'all next month.